Batman, a novelization by Craig Shaw Gardner, based on a screenplay by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron, and the character created by Bob Kane. It was a night like any other in the city, too hot, too humid, too loud, the sound of music mixed with car horns and laughter and the occasional scream. The street swarmed with life, 10 times as busy now that the sun was gone and the scum of the night could crawl from their holes, like roaches who needed the darkness to feed. Some of the streetlights still worked, enough to show the pushers, hookers, hustlers, addicts, and alkies loitering outside the tattoo parlors, the peep shows, and the broken-down saloons. And over it all, Luna, the full moon, ancient symbol of madness, rose to show its approval. Welcome to Gotham City. High up on a roof, 2 crooks are bent over a stolen wallet, the unconscious body of the victim beside them. Unbeknownst to them, something darker than the night stood on the edge of the roof. It walked toward them. Maybe it was a man. It spread what should have been its arms slowly, majestically. There was a movement below those arms like a shadow of something that wasn't there, or a great pair of leathery wings. On its chest there was a yellow oval that seemed to glow with a light of its own, and in the middle of that oval was the black emblem of a bat. "Don't kill me," one of the crooks pleaded. What are you?" the other one asked. "The Batman." Commissioner Gordon looked out over the crowd. The large hall at the Gotham City Democrats Club was packed. The huge victory banner said it all. "Congratulations, a new Gotham City, Harvey Dent, District Attorney." Or, at least, the banner described Gordon's dreams. A new Gotham City? Gordon hoped somehow Dent could make a difference. But he had seen others like Dent before him, bright, idealistic, full of fervor to reform the beast that they call Gotham City. Gordon noted that the last chair on the right, the one reserved for Bruce Wayne, was vacant. Gordon was a little surprised by that. Wayne had worked as hard as anybody here to get Dent elected. Dent had won in a landslide over the incumbent, a fellow whom the voters finally realized had been living in the pocket of the mob for the past 20 years. Maybe the vote meant that Gordon and the city had had enough people behind them this time to make a difference. Maybe truth and justice would triumph for a change, and some of the real criminals would end up behind bars. Maybe this, maybe that. Gordon sighed as he glanced to his left. There were few things certain in this world, but one of them was that he would always have to attend these political dinners, and at every one of them His Honor the Mayor would make a speech. "As mayor, I promised you that I would eliminate the source of corruption at the root, and that means boss Carl Grissom. Our new district attorney, Harvey Dent, will carry out on that promise, I promise." What a dump. Jack Napier absently fiddled through his lucky deck. It was amazing. With all the money Alicia Hunt had, not only from her modeling career, but from all those little presents Boss Grissom always gave her, she could have filled up her apartment with such expensive crap. Jack chuckled at his own private joke. He was having an affair with the mistress of his boss, Boss Grissom, and the old man had no idea. Napier dealt 4 jacks off the top of the deck, each card with a bullet hole in its center. He looked up at the TV. "Together we can make this city safe for decent people," Dent droned on. "Decent people shouldn't live here," Jack said back to the set. "They'd be happier somewhere else." Alicia glided across the room. She might not have any taste, but she still looked pretty good, in a cheap and tawdry sort of way, especially in that skimpy black negligee. Alicia brushed at her straight blonde hair as she stared at the television. Pretty tough talk about Carl." Jack waved away her observation with a flick of his lucky deck. "Oh, don't worry about it. If this clown could touch Grissom, I'd have killed him by now." Alicia leaned down over Jack, revealing even more of her cleavage. She grabbed his loosely knotted tie and pulled it tightly around his neck. "If Grissom knew about us," she mentioned, "he might kill you." "Oh, don't flatter yourself, Angel," he murmured, glancing at her at last. "He's a tired old man. He can't run this city without me. Besides, he doesn't know." Alicia frowned at him as he stood. "You don't worry about anything, do you, Jack?" Jack smiled to prove exactly how worried he was. The phones were ringing off the hook in the newspaper office when Knox walked in. The reporters were all gathered around Bob the cartoonist's desk in the corner of the city room. Worse than that, they all smiled when they saw Knox. Knox knew that hungry kind of smile. Wolves always hunted in packs. "They buried your story on the Batman," Thompson confided with a smirk. "They bury garbage," McPhee agreed. "Oh, Knox," Bob the cartoonist called sweetly, "I've got something for you." He held up a drawing of a human bat, an awful, fanged, rodent face sitting on top of a man's body in a business suit. The caption below read, "Have you seen this man?" Knox stopped outside his door. There was somebody already in there. He could see her through the office window. Whew, and what he could see! Well, if he could calm his heart and hormones long enough, they really were only a pair of legs. She was leaning back in Knox's swivel chair, poring over a copy of the Globe. Nice figure, nice dress, nice blonde hair. Knox stepped into the office. "Hello, legs," he greeted her. The hat tipped back. A face, fully in keeping with the rest of her form, smiled at him. "I'm reading your stuff," the face informed him. "And I'm reading yours," Knox happily agreed. He glanced at an oversized camera bag propped on the corner of his desk. It had a set of monogrammed initials, V.V. Legs stood up and offered her hand. Knox took it. She had a firm, no-nonsense handshake. "Hi," she said. "I'm Vicky Vale." Knox knew that name from somewhere. He searched his memory. Vicky Vale, let's see. He snapped his fingers. Vogue, Cosmo. "Oh, I've seen your stuff." His voice dropped to a more confidential tone. "Listen, you didn't come here to ask me to pose nude." He paused to wriggle his eyebrows. "Because you're going to need a real long lens." "Actually," Vicky replied, bright and businesslike, as if he hadn't just made the most incredibly tacky remark, "I've been to Corto Maltese." Corto Maltese, Knox thought. The war zone? That didn't fit at all with the fashion plate he saw before him. She reached into a camera bag and pulled out a small portfolio of photos. Combat photos. Knox leafed through them quickly. It was good stuff. Vicky wasn't afraid to get close to the action. Her photos showed the faces of war and packed a real emotional punch. "But what are you doing here?" It was Vicky's turn to raise an eyebrow. "I'm here to see some of the wildlife in Gotham City." Knox didn't get it. "Wildlife? Like what?" "Like bats." She pointed down at the papers scattered across Knox's desk. Papers filled with facts, speculation, false starts, even poorly drawn doodles of Knox's obsession, the human bat. This couldn't be real. Somebody actually believed him. "What's your angle?" he insisted. "A picture of a guy in a bat suit catching criminals?" She waved a hand in front of her as if she was writing a headline in the air. "Batman sweeps crime from Gotham. My pictures, your words." This is Pulitzer Prize material. "Oh, you're a visionary." "Problem is, you're the only one who believes me. I need something tangible. Gordon's got a file on this, but I can't get him on the phone." "Gordon?" Vicky gave Knox a conspiratorial wink. "He'll be at Bruce Wayne's benefit, won't he?" Knox nodded, a bit bewildered. "I don't seem to be on the guest list." What was that? Vicky had stuck something in his field of vision, something small and white, dangling about 3 inches from his nose, something that looked an awful lot like an invitation to Wayne Manor. "Will you help me?" she asked. "Yes," he replied sincerely. "Will you marry me?" Perhaps," she answered with a laugh. "Do you snore?" "I'll learn," he promised with a grin. It had been a long time since Grissom had had to worry about a politician in Gotham City. This new guy, Dent, refused to be bought. Grissom turned to one of his aides. "Say this son of a bitch makes a connection with us and Axis Chemicals. What kind of damage are we looking at?" The aide did not hesitate. "We're dead and buried." Jack Napier spoke without looking up from his cards. "Just let's break in, trash the office, make off with the books." Grissom grinned. "Smart thinking, Jack. In fact, I'd like you to handle this operation personally." "Me?" Jack flipped over a card. It was a joker. The silence was broken by Alicia's entrance. Grissom watched Jack Napier's eyes as he gave her a look that was too familiar. Exactly, Grissom thought. "My friend," Grissom said under his breath, "your luck is just about to change." Jack didn't like this one bit. He hadn't had to handle this kind of job in years, breaking and entering petty theft. Well, you paid guys to do these things for you, and you expected those guys to take the fall if they got caught. But Jack still worked for Grissom. For now, he had to do what the boss told him. He wasn't ready to make his move in the department yet. The break-in had gone fine so far. His boys had driven up in their unmarked vans and taken out the guards without any trouble at all. They had dismantled the burglar alarms in a matter of seconds. The safe was exactly where Grissom had said it should be. The guy with the blowtorch would have to open it in a minute or less. So why was Jack so uneasy? Jack had had that funny feeling ever since he'd been in Grissom's office and turned over a joker instead of a Jack. The safecracker flicked off his torch. He reached out with an asbestos glove and opened the door. "Empty," he announced. Shoot, Jack thought. He had known it. That's when the alarms went off. "We've been ratted out here, boys," Jack yelled to his cronies. "Let's get out of this mess." If he didn't get out of here fast, Jack Napier was a dead man. He'd gotten himself caught in the classic setup. When Grissom wanted to get rid of you, he made sure it was done right. The only escape was across the catwalk. Jack yelled for the others to follow him, and then he ran. Bullets flew past him, embedding themselves in the pipes clotted all around. Fluids burst forth from dozens of new holes. Liquids in every unnatural shade of green and red and purple and brown rained down across the catwalks. Who knew what that stuff was for, or what it could do to you? Jack ran through the poisonous downpour, careful not to slip on the wet metal underneath his feet. He would just have to hope that he could wash the chemicals off before they did any permanent damage. Jack, be nimble. Jack, be quick. Oh, Napier almost laughed as the nursery rhyme rattled through his head. Have you ever, "You're not out of this one yet, Jack boy," "danced with the devil"? Napier looked around. Time for a little diversion. By the pale moonlight. Oh, there were lots of diversions in a chemical factory, some of them quite deadly. Jack threw a switch here, twisted a dial there, running all the time. The huge machines exploded with sound. Jack couldn't hear his feet running anymore. He couldn't even hear the bullets following him. Everything was drowned beneath the automated thunder. Machines and bullets and screams and fumes. He wasn't free yet. And if he didn't get free, he could never get even. And that wouldn't be fair at all. In that case, Jack decided, it was more than a game. Now it was all one big, never-ending joke. There was an audible clang as a pair of boots hit the metal catwalk. Someone else was up there now, lost in the shadows between the lights. It was a man, dressed as a bat. Somebody grabbed him. "Jesus!" Jack yelled as he tried to break free. Who was this guy? Jack saw the .38 lying on the catwalk. That was the problem with a messy setup like this. People were dropping guns all over the place. Jack grabbed the gun. But then, the nut in the bat suit moved. Jack glanced over. There seemed to be a question on the bat guy's face. A question or a challenge? Jack smiled. Nice outfit or no, you didn't cross Jack Napier. "Have you ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight?" He fired point blank at the bat. But the bat was not still. He did something with his cape, swinging it forward. A bullet ricocheted, bounced right off the costume, straight back at Jack. He felt the pain in his cheek. Jack's hand was there before he knew what he was doing. His fingers were covered with blood. He had been shot in the face. He fell backward off the catwalk, over the railing. No! His hands grabbed the catwalk's edge. He looked down. Below him on the factory floor was a bubbling vat 20 feet across. He had to pull himself up, but he had no strength. His fingers slipped from the walkway, but he grabbed a pipe just below instead. The guy in the bat suit reached down from where he knelt on the catwalk and grabbed Jack's wrist. Jack lost the pipe, but the Batman held him. But his grip wasn't firm. Jack could feel the bat's cloth-covered fingers slipping away. He tried to reach out his own hand up to grip the other's wrist, but there was no strength left. Even through his burning nostrils he could smell the fumes below. There was nothing left. Was this the end of the joke? He felt his wrist slide again, felt the bat's grasp slip by his fingers. Jack fell. He screamed all the way down. First, it had only been his face. Now, everything was burning. He forced himself to think. Where was he? What could he do? Jack had fallen into the vat, but he hadn't stayed there. He had been pushed with tremendous force out with a wall of water, hanging on for an instant in the open air. He had gone out the sluice gate and fallen 40 feet into the East River, the river that still threatened to drown him if he didn't burn up first. There was something in his hand, something small and hard with corners. Jack opened his eyes in the moonlight. Even with the water in his face, even through the pain, he could see. Somehow, he had grabbed his lucky deck. The ace of spades slipped away in the current, the bullet hole clear through the black center, then another ace, a nine, a deuce, and all 4 jacks, card after card, carried away by the torrent. He gasped for breath as he felt the last of his lucky deck slip from his hand. The last card was a joker. Batman foils robbery. Jack Napier dead. Who is masked vigilante? Vicky had been a lot of places around the world, but somehow, none of them had been as nice as this. The 2 of them horseback riding in the fields behind Wayne Manor, the late summer air cut by the first breezes of autumn, the setting sun turning the entire world to red and gold. She was sorry when they caught sight of the stables again. Bruce reined in his mount, a dark stallion with just a hint of white, as they reached the stable yard. Vicky quickly followed on the polite but frisky strawberry roan she'd been given. She looked over at Bruce as they both dismounted. "You're not bad on a horse." He raised an eyebrow in disbelief as he groomed his horse with a currycomb. "Horses love me. I keep falling off. Maybe that's why they love me. You should see me. I'm one big mass of bruises." Vicky couldn't help but laugh. "Maybe we can arrange a little examination." He flashed his quick, mischievous grin. "You thought you had me, didn't you?" He started to walk up toward the main house, then stopped so that she could walk beside him. Vicky looked over at her date, even more dashing in the reddish glow of the setting sun. "There's something about you, Bruce Wayne, something that tries to be very hard, almost impenetrable, but is really very, very vulnerable." They walked the rest of the way to the manor in silence. Bruce led her to a broad patio at the rear of the house and asked her to sit in a chair at one side of a white table. Alfred appeared silently, bearing a bottle of champagne. He smiled briefly at Vicky. She smiled back. Then the butler was gone. There was a discreet cough from the patio door. "The Historical Society called to remind you of the banquet," Alfred announced. "Should I say you'll be there?" "Oh, absolutely," Bruce agreed a bit distractedly. He glanced at Vicky. "I'll be there." He yawned as he finished pouring the champagne. "Am I keeping you up?" Vicky asked with a grin. He looked a little sheepish. "I'm sorry. I've got a lot going on at the moment." "Like who?" she needled. That seemed to fluster him even more. No, just business. I'll be honest with you. I bore myself silly." He lifted his glass in her direction as if in a toast. "Tell me about you." Vicky considered as she cradled her champagne glass in her open palms. What was there to tell? "I take pictures," she began, "and I love doing it. I feel naked without a camera." One corner of Bruce's mouth turned up slightly. "Well, we'd better get you one." She found herself smiling in return. "You're a little elusive, Mr. Wayne," she ventured. "I feel there's a lot going on in there." He glanced back at her. "Oh, no, not really." "Oh, come on," she demanded quietly. "Say what you're really thinking." It took him a moment to start. "I was just thinking how beautiful you looked on that horse, and that, well, it's kind of nice to have someone here who notices things." It was such a simple thing to say, Vicky thought. Somehow it made her feel very warm inside. "See," she said with a smile. "I do have an extraordinary eye." She reached her hand across the table. "Two," he replied. He took her hand in his. They both looked out at a sunset that might go on forever. Jack couldn't see much with the bandages, and he didn't feel like doing too much looking around this pigsty either. He'd done enough gazing out broken windows, read too much subliterate graffiti. Oh, he'd be glad to get out of here. This kind of hole was too low rent even for rats. The doctor turned to him at last, a nervous twitch fighting with his insincere smile. Well, now, let's see how he did. Slowly, much too slowly, he snipped the bandages away, then pulled free the last of the gauze. He took a step away. He gasped, his smile gone, his eyes wide with something like fright. Jack didn't like that expression. "Mirror," he ordered. The doctor only stood there, open-mouthed. "Mirror?" Jack demanded. The doctor cleared his throat, quickly giving a hand mirror to Jack. Davis's hand was shaking so hard it took Jack a minute to grab the handle. He pulled the mirror in front of his face so he could see. Oh, God! The mirror slipped from his hands to shatter on the floor. Jack heard a low sob. Then he realized that it must have come from his own throat. You understand that the nerves were completely severed, Mr. Napier," Davis explained hastily. I'm sure," he continued, "that with the proper reconstructive surgery, Jack couldn't take it any more. He walked out of Davis's office, slamming the door behind him. And he laughed. And he laughed. Screams of laughter echoing up and down the tenement halls. He had been wrong. The joke wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. Grissom turned off the water and grabbed a towel. Too bad about Jack. But he knew as well as anybody what happened when you stepped out of line. Carl Grissom hadn't gotten where he was today by being a nice guy. He heard the elevator door open in the next room and someone settle with a sigh into one of the overstuffed chairs. Oh, it was Alicia, back from her daily shopping spree. Security would have called him if it was anybody else. "That you, Sugar Bumps?" Grissom called. She didn't answer. He wrapped the big towel around his waist and grabbed a smaller one to dry his hair as he walked into the other room. Alicia wasn't in her usual chair. Grissom looked around the room. There was someone sitting behind his desk. Someone totally covered by a raincoat, scarf, and oversized top hat. Didn't look like Alicia. "Who the hell are you?" "It's me," the muffled figure answered dryly. "Sugar Bumps." Grissom recognized that voice. "Jack." Maybe the other man nodded. It was too hard for Grissom to tell with all that clothing. They said he'd been shot, that he'd fallen into a vat of acid. How could he have survived? And what did he want now? Grissom decided it was time to start covering his tracks. "Oh, thank God you're alive," he said with all the sincerity he could muster. "I heard you'd been—" "Fried," Jack interrupted caustically. "Is that what you heard? You set me up." Jack spat out the words. "Over a girl. You must be insane." Grissom stopped and looked at the gun pointing at his belly. This time, Jack was serious. "Your life won't be worth spit," Grissom announced. "No, I've been dead once already," Jack replied matter-of-factly. "Oh, it's very liberating." "You just have to think of it as therapy." Jack raised the gun so it pointed at Grissom's heart. "Jack, listen. Look, we'll cut a deal." The gun didn't move. "Jack?" "Jack's dead, my friend. You can call me Joker." Then he took off his hat and coat. Grissom wished that he had left them on. He hardly looked like Jack Napier at all anymore. His flesh was bone white, his hair as green as artificial turf. But it was his mouth that was really horrible. Something that happened in the accident must have frozen his flesh that way. His lips, much too red against the rest of his skin, his mouth warped into a never-ending rictus grin. "As you can see," Jack replied. "Oh, I'm much happier." He giggled, and the giggling turned into laughter. He laughed even louder as he turned his gun on Grissom and fired, and fired, and fired! Vicky placed her invitation to Wayne Manor on a silver tray and was escorted into the dining room, where she was seated at the end of a very long table. At the other end was the millionaire playboy himself. Bruce Wayne. Both of them were very tense, but the mutual attraction was obvious. "How's the soup?" Bruce finally asked after a long silence. "Excuse me?" The table was so long that Vicky could barely hear him. "Soup." "Oh, it's great. Could you pass the salt?" Bruce got up and walked the salt all the way down to the other end of the table. "So, did you have a difficult time finding the house?" he wondered. "No, do you like eating in this room?" Bruce thought about that for a second. "Do you know, I don't think I've ever seen this room before. The house is so big." They laughed. The tension was at last broken. The next thing Vicky knew, she was eating dinner at the kitchen table, listening to Alfred tell her funny stories about Bruce's childhood. "Well, I think I've embarrassed him enough. I'm going to bed," Alfred concluded. As he left the kitchen, Vicky leaned close to Bruce confidingly. "He's wonderful. He loves you a lot." "Yeah, I couldn't find my socks without him." "What about the rest of your family?" "Oh, Alfred's really my only family." Vicky was charmed by Bruce's quiet modesty. "This house, this stuff, it just doesn't seem like you." "Well, the dining room definitely isn't me." Vicky laughed. "You're very strange." "Thank you." For a moment they were silent, looking at each other. Then Vicky said, "No, I'm half drunk and you're not even—" Hey, 2 drinks and I'm flying." Bruce picked a biscuit up, dipped it in jam, and offered it to Vicky. She smiled and opened her mouth. Bruce slipped it in. There was jam on her lips as he kissed her. Well, it had to be in here somewhere. Warner, Watson, Wyman was the last folder in the drawer. Where was it? A pair of fingers tapped Vicky on the shoulder. She glanced around, right at the manila folder with the title, Wayne. Bruce. Allie Knox grinned at her. She grabbed the file from his hands. "I'm looking for that." It was a very thin file. "Look, I thought we were a team here," Knox shook his head. "I'm losing confidence in you, going out with this weirdo." She opened the file. There was hardly anything in here. Bruce Wayne attends society fundraiser. Bruce Wayne gives to a new orphanage. Well, this sort of fellow wasn't going to tell her anything that she needed to know. There's nothing in this file but social puffery. No photos, no history, nothing. That's strange. Now, where does he get his money? What does he do all day? Who is he? Who was Bruce Wayne? Maybe it had been her pride that had started her on this, but it was her own news instincts that would find the truth. He'd gotten too close to the wrong woman. Whatever Bruce Wayne was hiding, it wouldn't stay there long. On-the-spot action news. Mayor Borg and that new guy, Harvey Dent, both looked suitably uncomfortable. Oh, they were trying to hide it, but the on-the-spot action newswoman shoved a microphone in the mayor's face. "Does this gang war dampen the city's plans for the 200th anniversary festival?" "Oh, the festival opens," the mayor blustered. "The police are going to stop these gangsters." "Mr. Dent," the on-the-spot action newswoman continued, "what do you think of the theory that the mysterious Batman is a mob enforcer killing these men?" "What?" The television screen shattered as the Joker screamed with rage. "Batman? Batman? Can somebody please tell me what kind of a world we live in where a man dressed as a bat gets my airtime? Oh, this city needs an enema!" He jumped from his chair, storming out of his newly refurnished boardroom. The Joker stopped by a couple of his highly paid scientists. He had to shout to be heard over the machinery noise. "Have we shipped 1,000,000 of these things?" "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir," the scientists chorused. "Well, ship it all," the Joker cheered. "Untangle the knots. Roll the wheels. I've got my blood up." The Joker banged open the door to his very special room. The room had no windows and very little ventilation. It was in the very bowels of Axis Chemical. The walls were covered with scenes of war, the very best photographs from the very best family magazines. But what was on the table was even better, stacks and stacks of folders with all those special initials, FBI, KGB, CIA. The Joker especially liked the one on top. DDID nerve gas, results of preliminary experimentation. Stamped across the folder were the words, discontinued 1977 and highly confidential. But inside was the best part of all. All those Glossy 8x10s, photo after photo of dead soldiers, their putrefying lips drawn back in very special smiles. "Losing is a bad habit," the Joker remarked to Bob, wistfully. "So much to do, and so little time." Bob stepped forward quickly. "Here's the photos." The Joker lifted his eyebrows as he flipped through Bob's offerings. He stopped at this photo of a twerp in a polyester jacket. "Who's this dud?" Bob glanced over his shoulder. "Oh, that's Knox." "Bad tie," was the Joker's verdict. "No style." He flipped to the next photo. His mouth opened. He gasped for air. His heart went pit-a-pat. "Stop the press! Who is that?" "Oh, that's Vicky Vale," Bob answered. "She's the photographer working with Knox." The Joker licked his ample lips. He needed to study this photo in some detail. "Oh, that woman has style. Jesus, marimba! Ooh, a lovely beast like that could get a man up and running." He pulled a pair of scissors from one of his many pockets and, humming a happy tune, cut the babe's likeness out from all that interfering background. "She's been dating some guy named Wayne," Bob informed him. "Oh, well, she's going to trade up." And now it's the on-the-spot action news with your co-anchors, Becky Narita and Peter McElroy. The camera focused on Becky. She smiled. "Good evening," she began. "Plans continue for the city's 200th birthday party as Mayor Borg announced the unveiling of a statue of John T. Gotham, Gotham's founder." A hand reached in from off-screen, leaving a piece of paper on Peter's desk. He grabbed the note and read, "The smile gone. This just in, 3 mysterious deaths at a beauty parlor in..." Becky started to laugh. Peter frowned over at his co-anchor. "Becky? This is... Becky!" He jumped up as something crashed off-screen. Somebody switched to a 2-shot so everyone could see what was happening to Becky. She was writhing in her seat, her face twisting into all sorts of interesting convulsions. The camera jerked back and forth, like the cameraman wasn't sure that he should be shooting this. "Kill the camera!" Peter yelled hysterically. "Kill the..." The picture disappeared. There was nothing but static. "Oh, that was quite nice." The Joker pressed a button. What came next was even better. The videotape rolled, the Joker's TV signal overriding that of the news station and every other television station in Gotham City. That's when the cheerful theme rose up in the background. "Now, spread sunshine all over the place. Just put on a happy face. Oh, love that Joker!" "Wow," the Joker sighed happily. "Oh, was this art or was this art?" Of course, now it got even better. The scene shifted to a supermarket. And that most eloquent of pitchmen, the Joker! He wheeled a cart down the aisle, merrily waving to the audience in time to the happy-face Muzak in the background. He grabbed a brightly colored package from the shelves and thrust it toward the camera. "New, improved Joker brand," he explained in his best announcer voice. "With my secret sauce, Smilex." His hand pointed off-screen. "Now, let's go to our blind taste test." The picture changed again to show a tied, gagged, and blindfolded man struggling, quite uselessly, in his chair. A neat white title appeared on the lower part of the screen. "Not an actor." "Oh," the Joker's voice cooed. "He's not happy. He's been using Brand X. But with new, improved Joker brand..." The camera pulled back to show our blind taste tester was not alone. Next to him was a blindfolded corpse with the most magical smile. The camera switched once again to our pitchman, now lounging next to a full-size cardboard cutout of one of our models once she had the Joker's treatment. That lovely chalk-white flesh. Ooh, that magnificent green hair. That luscious tan, the Joker announced. Those ruby lips and hair color so natural. Only your Undertaker knows for sure. The scene switched to quick shots of a dozen delivery trucks, their sides emblazoned with the names and logos of all the fine products that have made this great nation of ours what it is today. Oh, I know what you're saying, a pitchman's voice crooned over the pictures. Where can I buy these fine new items? Well, that's the deal, folks. Chances are you've bought them already. The Joker's handsome and distinctive face returned to the screen. He winked broadly at the audience. So, if you did, he added cheerfully, remember, put on a happy face. The Joker cut the transmission. Oh, what a wonderful show! Oh, he could see all Gotham now. Young women afraid to get ready for their big night out. Young men fearful of using deodorants or shaving creams. Oh, this was the Joker's finest hour. It was showtime in Gotham forever and ever. Or at least as long as there was anyone left alive. Now, let's see Batman top this. Panic grips Gotham, the Globe headline read. Contaminated products claim 13 lives. Who is the mysterious Joker? An anchorwoman looked out at the TV screen. And what is the pattern? Food, alcohol, or beauty and hygiene products, cologne, mouthwash, underarm deodorant. Or worse yet, she said, there may be no pattern. The search goes on through Gotham's shopping nightmare. Ha ha ha! Oh, he was a clever Joker. He'd already rinsed his hair a very attractive shade of black. Now he had to cover his white skin with the flesh-tone makeup again. There was no use frightening Vicky Vale too quickly, especially after all the trouble he'd gone to. First, impersonating Bruce Wayne's butler to make the date with the lovely Miss Vale, then getting Alicia, after he'd sobered her up a bit, to call that self-same butler to impersonate Vicky and make a date on the other end. Oh, it probably wasn't necessary to have invited Wayne, but the tidiness of it all is what appealed to the Joker. After all, why not kill that millionaire playboy now and get the competition out of the way? He smiled at his reflection as he put the finishing touches on his face. True. This was all a lot of trouble, but you had to look your best on a first date. He stood with a flourish, admiring his countenance in the vanity mirror. Now, was there anything he had missed? Any last-minute touch to make the total effect even more devastating? Yes. Yeah. He placed a very special flower in his lapel. Vicky glanced at her watch. She'd been waiting here for 20 minutes. She was getting angrier with every extra minute that passed. How could she confront Bruce Wayne if Bruce Wayne refused to appear? Oh, she didn't know what to think anymore. She found herself in the middle of a brand new war, a war where the Joker had made up the rules. She sipped her gin and tonic as she watched a waiter approach. He was carrying a package. Miss Vale, this has just arrived for you, the waiter murmured before he turned on his heels and disappeared. It was a small parcel wrapped in brown paper with 3 words written on it in crayon, her name, and a large red urgent. She tore off the wrapper. Inside, there was a small white box with a note attached, also written in crayon. Dear V. Vale, put this on right now. Vicky opened the box. But what was this small grey thing inside? It looked like nothing so much as a miniature gas mask. She noticed an odd hissing noise. There was purple smoke coming from the ventilators in the corner of the room. Waiters collapsed on the floor, letting trays of food crash with them. The fellow at the next table to had dropped his fork and fell face first into his pasta salad. Vicky put on the mask. A moment later, she was the only one still conscious in the entire restaurant. 100 people had fallen around her. Some rested on tables, half in and half out of their meals. Far more had fallen to the floor, their arms and legs at unnatural angles. Some of them had collected in piles near the doors as they realized what was happening and tried futilely to turn and escape. All of them were out cold. At least, Vicky hoped they were only unconscious. The far door of the museum burst open, violently, and whether she wanted to or not, Vicky was receiving visitors. The Joker led the way. He had put on his artist's beret for the occasion. The boys followed quickly, toting the champagne and the glasses, and Of course, Steve Areno carted in that huge ghetto blaster. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. Ooh, it was time for a party. He walked over to the nearest wall to examine the artwork. Okay, everybody, he announced, let's broaden our minds. The boys all went to look at paintings of their own. Boom shakalaka-laka, the radio commented. Aha! Here was a painting the Joker recognized. Blue Boy, by Gainsborough. Oh, a beautiful full-length portrait of a young man dressed in blue. What line! What a sense of colour. It was almost perfect. The Joker raised his cane to trace the outlines of the portrait. Yes. He could feel that artistic impulse now. He pressed that special button at the handle of the cane, the one that tripped the switchblade. Now he wanted just the right sensibility here. The Joker bit on his tongue as he carved a large Joker smile in the Blue Boy's canvas face. Oh, there! Ha ha! Much better. Oh, art could be so satisfying. The boys took that as their cue to make artwork of their own, working quickly with their knives and spray paint, giving all those stuffy Manets and Renoirs and Degas some thoroughly modern additions. Boom shakalaka-laka, the radio urged them on. Boom shakalaka-laka. It was much better with music. As the Joker always said, whistle while you work. He moved on down the line of paintings, letting the boys have their way with all but the very best. What have we here? The Scream by Edvard Munch. Oh, a black and white figure screaming with pain and anguish and madness, a creature both pitiful and terrifying in its intensity, as if it contained all the pain and anguish and madness in the world. Ooh, I kind of like that one, he declared. Leave it! In the meantime, the Joker had other business. His date was waiting for him in the cafe upstairs. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. Vicky could feel the trap close around her. His face was no longer ghostly white, but his unnatural smile was still there. His good cheer made Vicky feel even more trapped than she had been before. The Joker pulled up a chair. He nodded at her mask. I think it's safe now to take that off. Hesitantly, she took off her mask as the Joker snapped his fingers. Two of his goons rushed forward, one with a pair of candlesticks and the other with an enormous portable radio. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka. The Joker pressed a button. The disco beat was replaced by 1,001 strings. He pulled a silver lighter from inside his double-breasted purple coat. He flicked it on, and a foot-long flame burst forth. He lit the candles. It was all like some tremendous sort of parody of romance. You're beautiful, the Joker remarked smoothly. In an old-fashioned sort of way, the Joker continued. I'm sure we can make you more today. He moved his chair a little closer. Vicky resisted the urge to move hers away. The Joker began in a voice like velvet. In crime, the passions ripen fully. His voice started to rise, as if there at last was something he really believed in. Now I do what others only dream of. I do art until somebody dies. He raised both of his hands in a gesture of triumph. See, I am the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist. He was completely mad, and at the same time, completely sincere. A woman's voice spoke behind her. Jack. Vicky turned around. The Joker's henchman was leading a woman dressed in white, wearing a porcelain doll's mask. The woman didn't seem to be very steady on her feet, and her guide had to spend as much time ensuring she kept her balance as urging her forward. You said I could watch you improve the paintings, the newcomer said. Her voice was slow and unsteady, as if slurred from alcohol or drugs. The Joker rolled his eyes. Oh, I'm in trouble now. Another henchman pulled up a chair, and Alicia sat. She started slowly to undo the mask. Her drugged fingers had some trouble with the knots. You see, Miss Vale, the Joker continued, Alicia's been made over in line with my new philosophy. Now, Like me, she's a living work of art. Alicia took off the mask. Oh, God. Vicky lurched out of her seat. She couldn't help herself. The chair fell with a crash as she stumbled away. "Oh, well, I'm no Picasso," the Joker continued, as modest as before. "You like it?" Vicky threw a second chair in the Joker's path. Like it? She couldn't look back at Alicia no matter how she tried. The right side of her face was perfectly normal, like a model's face, but the left side, skin, melted into muscle, which in turn eroded away to scar tissue and bone. How long had it taken the Joker to destroy Alicia's face so completely? The Joker grinned at her. That crazy, sincere grin. He wiggled his eyebrows. "Well, then, what do you think about a little you and me? Oh, come on. Come on, let's make up." He walked around the table toward her. "Here's a flower." One of his hands encircled a large purple boutonniere on his lapel, while his other hand reached into his coat pocket. The bulb was large and shiny. It looked as if it might be made of plastic. There was nothing natural about that flower. "No!" Vicky screamed. She jumped aside, almost toppling the table, as a jet of clear liquid sprayed from the center of the purple bloom. The floor smoked and sizzled where the liquid hit. It was acid. He was on top of her. She couldn't get away. All she could see was the purple flower and that big grin. Something shattered overhead. Everything was perfect until that noise, the Joker thought. He looked up. Something had come through the skylight. That same dark something that was dropping to the floor. No, the Joker corrected himself. It wasn't just any old something. It was the Batman. He landed only a half a dozen feet away. He pointed his fist at the Joker. Was Batman going to shoot the Joker? The Batman fired. The projectile split in two, each half embedding itself into the walls past the balcony on either side of the Joker. The Joker realized there were wires attached to each of the spikes, and another wire leading from the Batman to his skylight entranceway. The Batman grabbed Vicky and swung out along the escape wires he had created for himself, plunging off the balcony and straight through an arched doorway marked Exit. It took Vicky a moment to realize that she'd been rescued. Batman had put his arm around her, and a second later they were off the balcony and out into the foyer of the museums. "Get in the car," Batman yelled behind her. There were a lot of cars here, but there was only one jet black, super sleek sports car with customized bat hubcaps. The doors lifted upward with a barely discernible whir, revealing what looked more like twin cockpits than a driver's and passenger's side. Vicky climbed into the passenger cockpit. "Ignition," Batman ordered. The entire dashboard lit with a dozen different dials and indicators. A small light on the left-hand side flashed. Voice print, okay. There was some sort of control board between the seats as well, full of lights and buttons and toggle switches. "Ignition," a computerized voice replied. The engines revved as Batman vaulted into the other side. The goons scattered as Batman's car roared from the alley. Vicky glanced in the rear-view mirror. The Joker's henchmen were climbing into a van and a pair of cars. She glanced at the glowing speedometer. The car took the corner at 50 miles an hour. They turned into the heart of Gotham City. The streets were full of cars, the sidewalks and crosswalks full of pedestrians. She saw people running as the van behind them careened over a curb. Batman pushed his car even faster. Vicky saw the blinking right-turn signal a second time. They must be going 90 by now. Even a car as aerodynamically designed as this couldn't turn at the speed. Batman flipped one of the many switches on the control panel between them. A line rocketed from Vicky's side of the car, a line with a spike on the end that embedded itself into a brick wall beyond the sidewalk. The car swung around the corner on the end of the line. Batman flicked another switch, and the line dropped away. They were still doing 90. "Damn!" Batman yelled. They were in a blind alley. The road ended 100 yards ahead. He jammed on the brakes as he pressed another button on the panel. As the wheels beneath slammed to a halt, the body of Batman's car lifted up and rotated 180 degrees so that it was facing the other way. Batman pressed the accelerator, and they were on their way again, out of the alley, headed toward Gotham Square. A gigantic crane was backing down the street into the intersection, blocking both lanes. and they were headed straight for it. He pumped the brakes as they careened toward the sidewalk. They stopped, inches away from a lamppost. Too many people. He pressed another button, and the doors whirred open. "Come on," he yelled as he leapt from his seat. "Shields," he ordered as soon as she was out as well. "Shields," a computer voice replied. Dark steel plates quickly clanged into place, over the cockpit, the wheels, the exhaust system, like nothing so much as an impenetrable black cocoon. The Batman was already leading her at a run into the construction site. He looked up. Vicky followed his gaze. There was a catwalk, but it was 5 stories up. Batman looked back at Vicky, the eye holes in his mask, twin mirrors. "How much do you weigh?" he snapped. She stumbled. 108. He cocked his head a bit to one side as if performing some quick mental calculations. The bad guy's car squealed back to the mouth of the alley, blocking the exit. The goons piled out of the car. Vicky looked back at Batman. He was holding some kind of bat-shaped boomerang attached to a thin nylon rope. He threw the boomerang aloft. It caught on the catwalk. He grabbed Vicky around the waist. "Hang on!" He flicked something at his belt. Vicky and Batman shot upwards, almost as if they were fish being reeled in. A bullet whizzed angrily by her ear. They went up 1 story, 2, but their flight was slowing. On the 3rd floor up, they stopped. Vicky realized whatever mechanism was reeling them in must not be able to take their combined weight. Vicky felt a mixture of guilt and panic. Oh, they were sitting ducks up here. Oh, she should have told Batman what she really weighed. Batman twisted around. Vicky looked down and screamed. The goons all had their heavy artillery pointed at the 2 of them, but the bad guys were taking their time now, waiting for the twisting and turning up there to stop so that they could easily kill them both. "Whatever happens," Batman whispered hoarsely, "don't let go." Vicky skyrocketed upward, shrieking as she went. She saw Batman beneath her, cape billowing as he fell the 2 stories to the pavement. There was a crash beneath her. She looked down to see that Batman had landed in the middle of a pile of garbage cans. The goons rushed over to him. He smashed a pair of them into the wall before he was even on his feet. But a 3rd had found a lead pipe in the rubbish. He smashed it into the back of Batman's skull. Vicky felt so helpless up here. She pulled herself to the catwalk, then over onto the roof. But she didn't have a gun. What could she do? The lead goon fired 2 shots, point blank, at the yellow and black insignia on Batman's chest. The body jerked. Vicky leaned over the edge. Was she too late? "Wait a minute," the 3rd interrupted. He crouched down beside the body and poked at Batman's costume. "What is this?" the last thug asked. "Some kind of body armor or something," the kneeling man replied. "He's human, after all," the man who shot him said, courage back in his voice. "Take the mask off." Body armor? Vicky realized that must mean that he was still alive. They pulled off his mask, but his face was still in the shadows. "Get out of the way," the leader yelled. "I can't see him." That's when Vicky set off the flash gun. The goons were startled, disoriented. "God damn it," one of them yelled. "It's the girl." She flashed the strobe again, this time taking a photo as well. Batman opened his eyes as the 4 gunmen aimed their weapons at him. His right hand snaked up to grab the coat of the nearest one, spinning him around into the gunfire of the other 3. Then Batman was on his feet. Using the brand-new corpse for a shield, he heaved the lifeless man through the air. The body landed on the top of one of his friends. The one who was still alive fell back over the garbage can to crack his head against a wall, and he fell down out cold. Now there was only one more little matter to take care of. Batman pulled his mask back into place as he turned to face his final business. Batman smiled. The trash screamed and ran. Batman noticed the strobe lights had started again overhead. Vicky Vale was up there taking pictures. Yeah, maybe this was the wrong thing to do after the Batman had saved her life, but there was something about him, something so familiar and so strange at the same time. She realized she didn't want these pictures so much for the Globe as for herself. She needed to see his face. Once she developed the film, she would know the true identity of the Batman. Her camera bag slung over her shoulder, she grabbed at the bottom rung of the fire escape and swung herself down to the sidewalk. Now, she thought, to get out of here. She glanced quickly over her shoulder. It was too quiet around here. She wouldn't want to run into the Joker's men again, or the Batman now, for that matter. She quickened her pace, turning her head back to look where she was going. But there was something in her way, something large and black. She couldn't stop herself. She walked bodily right into the Batman. You weigh a little more than 108. He led her out into the street. She looked up to see the Batmobile screaming towards them. They had to get out of its way. Instead, Batman stepped directly into the headlight beams. "Stop," he demanded. Brakes squealed. Driving out of the city, Batman slowed the car on a deserted stretch of road bordered on both sides by tall, ancient pines. He flicked another one of the switches on his control console, and Vicky suddenly found the window before her had become completely opaque. She couldn't see where they were going, which, she realized, must be precisely what Batman had in mind. "This is kidnapping," she pointed out. "It looks like it," Batman agreed. He flicked on a light switch between them, a light so bright that Vicky could no longer look at him. She blinked, trying to adjust to the brightness, then noticed that she could see out of the front glass on her side again. Not that she wanted to. It looked like they were driving straight for a sheer cliff wall. The cliff wall had vanished. Vicky realized it was some sort of trick. A projection, maybe. Something done with mirrors. Instead of smashing on the rocks, the car rushed in to the mouth of a giant cave. Vicky looked overhead as Batman stopped the car. They were in an enormous cavern. Floodlights overhead illuminated rows of stalactites. In places she could see cave walls of rough-hewn stone. In others, passages twisted their way into darkness. The cavern was so vast that the floodlights could really penetrate only small portions of the overall chamber, making pools of light in a sea of total dark. She could identify some things in the better-lit corners of the gloom. Over against the far wall was a whole bank of computers, next to a lathe and a jigsaw, and rows of tools. A fully equipped machine shop. Beyond that was a table piled with flasks and beakers and Bunsen burners. She guessed it was some sort of chemical analysis setup. Vicky decided that she wouldn't be surprised if Batman had a whole crime lab down here. "Welcome to the Batcave," Batman said. There was another sound, far above her. The high, shrieking cries of animals. She looked further overhead, above the gymnast rings, and saw the shadows of wings in the lights at the roof of the cave. Oh, she shivered when she realized what it was. "Bats," she said softly. "Oh, they're terrifying." "Yeah, that's the idea," Batman agreed. "Yeah, bats are great survivors." "What are you going to do with me?" "You're going to do something for me," Batman replied. What did he mean by that? She watched as he walked behind the lab table. Now she was closer, she could see more than beakers and Bunsen burners. There were cosmetics, deodorants, shampoos, all sorts of products. On Batman's left, a computer printer began to chatter. Vicky looked at a monitor next to the printer, automatically scrolling through an endless list. "Yeah, what is all this?" she asked. Batman turned toward her. His hands above the table were in light, but his face was still in darkness. "The police have got it all wrong," he said brusquely. "They're looking for one product. It's much bigger than that. The Joker's tainted hundreds of basic chemicals at the source." At the source? Vicky looked at the vast array of cosmetics and beauty care items spread out before her. She struggled to comprehend exactly what he was saying. "But then whole shipments of every product would be poisoned. We'd all be dead." He shook his head in the darkness. "No, each product contains only one component. The poison only works when they're mixed." He picked up a can off the table. "Hairspray won't do it alone, but hairspray and perfume and lipstick will be toxic, and," his hand swept above the drugstore's worth of products, "untraceable." When he turned back to her, he had a thick manila envelope in his hands. He stepped forward and passed it to her. "Now, Take this to the press. She looked inside. There must have been 50 sheets of paper, all full of chemical equations and lists of tainted products. People need that information. But you could have just sent it, she shot back. You're right, he said in her ear. I could have. But there is something else. Vicky had trouble breathing regularly enough to answer him. What? She managed. You have something I want, he replied. What could I have that you want? Her voice suddenly sounded very small. Batman swirled his cape over her. She felt trapped. She couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream. His arms encircled her. That calmed her somehow. It was odd. Somewhere beneath the panic, there was something familiar, even reassuring about the embrace. He freed one of his hands and raised his glove towards her face. There was something in that glove, something acrid. She felt her eyes close. The lids were too heavy to keep them open. It was knockout gas. The panic wanted to rise in her again, but no. She was tired, too tired. Everything. Batman, the cave pools of darkness and light, everything was fading away. The last sound she heard was the flapping of wings. Bat wings. When she woke up the next day, in her very own bed, she immediately pressed her hand to her bosom. The film was gone. War of the Freaks, the headline screamed. Joker and Batman clash at Flugelheim Museum. War of the Freaks! Oh, what publicity. The Joker thought it had been perfection itself until they brought him the evening edition of the Globe. War of the Freaks had moved down to the lower right-hand corner, supplanted by a new banner headline. Batman cracks Joker's poison code. Citizens told to avoid the following products. The TV chattered away with on-the-spot action news. Avoid the following combinations, Peter McElroy read solemnly. Deodorants with baby powder, hairspray, and odor eaters. He went down the list, citing every tried and true combination the Joker had devised. It was the Joker's turn to scream. After all the Joker's clever planning, hours and hours putting together the very best designer deaths, these TV fools were wondering about the Batman. Where was truth here? Where was justice more than anything? Where was the American way? Oh, I've given a name to my pain, he screamed to a room full of lackeys, and it is Batman! They had the press conference on the steps of Gotham City Hall. That in itself was significant. Yesterday, Commissioner Gordon knew Mayor Borg would have led any press conference from the newly built reviewing stand across the street in Gotham Square. The mayor wanted that stand and the celebration surrounding it to begin a renewal of all that was good about their city. But the Joker had changed all that. Tomorrow, the city would tear that podium down. Borg cleared his throat and spoke into the dozen microphones on the stand before him. The 200th anniversary birthday gala has been indefinitely postponed. That was all the mayor could bring himself to say. He stepped aside and let Harvey Dent, the new voice of Gotham City, take center stage. Dent looked straight into the central television camera and began to speak. We are vehemently opposed to terrorism in any form, but a toxin has been found in the coffee at the police stations. And with 2/3 of our police force disabled, we simply cannot guarantee public safety. Dent hesitated. Somebody had run out of one of the mobile video trucks and was yelling at the cameraman. Gordon glanced over at the mayor. What's going on? He demanded. See for yourself, a thin, balding fellow replied. This monitor shows the feed going out to the local stations, and only one half of that picture is ours. Gordon looked at the monitor for himself. The screen was split down the middle, with the left half showing the scene at City Hall. The right half was blank, showing nothing but video snow. But then a picture formed in the snow and solidified to show the figure of a man sitting in a director's chair in front of a giant, yellow, happy face. Gordon only recognized the figure in the chair when the picture came into focus. It was the Joker. Joker here. The Joker paused and leaned toward the camera. Now, yeah, I can be theatrical, maybe even a little rough, but there's one thing I'm not. I am not a killer. I am an artist. He leaned even closer so that his grin filled the screen. Oh, and I love a party. So, truce, guys, truce! The camera retreated as he spread his arms wide. Commence au festival! His announcement was greeted by applause. Yeah, canned applause. I've even got a little present for Gotham City, the Joker continued, his voice rising with the excitement. At midnight, I will drop $20 million cash on the crowd. He waved his hands again, this time as a gesture of humility. I've got plenty, he added, so don't worry about me. And there will be entertainment, he cheered. The big fight. Me in one corner, and in the other, the man who has brought real terror to this city. He paused dramatically, his eyes wide with feigned fright. Batman! Can you hear me, Batman? He asked in a stage whisper. Just you and me, mano a mano. I've taken off my makeup. Let's see if you can take off yours. Such a peaceful night in a Gotham City warehouse. The night watchman, the only night watchman in the whole peaceful warehouse, sat reading one of those lurid tabloid newspapers. Pygmy flying saucers land in Russia. Ghost of Elvis loses 60 pounds on miracle diet. Didn't he know that stuff like that didn't happen in real life? Real life was much more fantastic. One of the boys knocked the peaceful night watchman on the back of the head. The Joker ordered the rest of the gang to follow. Somebody turned on the lights. They started up the generators, climbed into the cabs of the parade floats, and, quickly, began to inflate the pitifully withered giant balloons. No, this wasn't going to be a dull daytime parade. This parade was going to march down Broad Avenue in the middle of the night. The Joker's announcements had been playing on the Gotham City's television sets for hours. Come see the parade, and make a few bucks besides. He expected quite a turnout, even at the witching hour. Oh, people always wanted something for nothing. Oh, too bad that he'd forgotten to mention those other little dividends he intended to give the crowd as well. Oh, he was such an absent-minded Joker. Oh, well. The doors of the warehouse opened, and the trucks started for Broad Avenue, towing their searchlights and floats and giant balloons. The Joker's favorite float was the one with the giant banners that read, Happy Birthday, Gotham City! I am prepared to rule the world, he screamed. And then he started to laugh and laugh. After tonight, he didn't think he'd ever stop. They lined Broad Avenue, first hundreds, then thousands of curious citizens waiting for a midnight parade. And all that free cash. And the Joker was not about to disappoint them. Amplified rock music blasted from huge speakers mounted on either side of the light. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. How appropriate, the Joker thought, to have a birthday parade at night. When the real city came to life. The citizens were having a good time now. It was about to get even better. That's when the money started to fall. The air was filled with thousands of dollar bills. The citizens were amazed. Yes, there, look up. In the middle of the swirling money, look carefully, citizens, at the float in the lead. There was the throne, and on that throne was the Joker. The Joker pitched the bills up and away, right into the path of a giant fan conveniently located for maximum circulation. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. Have you ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight? This time he could ask all of Gotham City. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. The Joker tossed another bundle of dollar bills into the air. That's right, folks, he screamed into his handy portable microphone. Who can you trust? Me! And he threw more bills aloft. Me! I'm here handing out real money. And where is Batman? He's at home, washing his tights. His laughter was cut short by a loud whooshing sound overhead. He looked up above the parade route, and there, illuminated by the sweeping searchlights, was some sort of private jet, painted jet black, and built to look like the wing of a bat. Oh, Batman did have such nice toys. He laughed even louder than before as he threw a final fistful of bills in front of the giant circulating fan. Now, now it was time to get down to business. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. Hey, a fellow asked angrily from the base of the float. What is this stuff? Oh, dear. The fellow was upset because the green dye was coming off the money and getting all over his hands. Or maybe he was miffed because all the money underneath the dye was Joker money, with the Joker's handsome face right there on $1 bills in place of dull old George Washington. Well, what did the fellow expect him to do? Give away real greenbacks? Cries of cheater and hey, this stuff is fake drifted in over the rock and roll. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka. Oh, what could you do with a crowd like that? Oh, well. The Joker guessed it was time to kill them all. He spoke into his handy mic one more time. Now comes the part where I relieve you, oh, the little people, of the burden of your failed and useless lives. But, as my plastic surgeon always said, when you gotta go, go with a smile. He reached beneath his throne and pulled out his handy remote control. He pointed the control up toward the balloons above, pressing the handy big red button at the control's center. The dozens of canisters started to release their deadly green gas into their respective balloons, making all the Saturday cartoon favorites bloat and extend themselves as they prepared to explode. The Joker screamed with laughter as he fitted the gas mask over his nose and mouth. The balloons upstairs were getting more swollen by the instant, developing some unsightly bulges around the seams that looked temptingly as if they might rip at any second. And when they ripped, that lovely Smilex gas would blossom forth, enough gas to cover half of Gotham City. Citizens were starting to scream out there. At last, a few members of the crowd were getting it into their poor, dim brains. They were all going to die, and die in a very special way, with big, cheerful, Smilex grins. Funny money fluttered to the ground as the mob trampled every which way. Oh, it was hard to laugh when you were wearing a gas mask. Oh, yes it was. But the Joker did his best. Batman might never have seen the leaking gas if one of the guy wires on the balloon hadn't gotten loose, but because one of the moorings was gone, the underdog balloon was bobbing and weaving in an erratic fashion, caught in the wind tunnel effect between Gotham City's skyscrapers, almost as if Underdog was waving to him. It was enough of an oddity that he turned the Batwing around to investigate, and a moment later he had seen the green fog leaking from the metal egg strapped underneath the balloon, and the Joker's henchmen wearing gas masks down below. Smilex gas it had to be. But it was only deadly if it could reach the crowd below. He was beyond the parade again in a matter of seconds. He pulled the Batwing into a tight loop, then dove for Broad Avenue, leveling out 30 feet above the street. His computer told him what he needed to know. He flipped a pair of switches on the controls, one to angle the razor-sharp edge of the wings, the other to open a trap behind the razors to catch the severed ropes and hold them fast. He threw the Batwing forward, beneath the balloons. The Joker couldn't believe it. The Batman's plane was slicing through the wires that held the murderous balloons to the floats below, then carrying the balloons along in the jet's wake, a bright, bouncing, multicolored bunch of misplaced death. What was he going to do? Let them out over the ocean? My balloons! The Joker screamed. Those are my balloons! Batman was going to crash. That was his first thought when he looked back out of the nose of the plane and saw the ruin of Gotham Cathedral looming before him. He'd been paying too much attention to the balloon gathering, and now the end of Broad Avenue was coming up fast. He lifted the nose as quickly as he dared. The Batwing responded quickly, but the cathedral was still coming up too fast. One of the wings would catch the crumbling tower. The engine screamed as he banked the plane sharply right. Somehow he missed the cathedral tower by inches. But the maneuver was not without its cost. The Batwing was climbing full out, G-forces pushing Batman back into his seat. He fought against the pressure, pushing against air that suddenly seemed to weigh 100 pounds per square inch. Boom shakalaka-laka, boom shakalaka-laka, the blaring rock music echoed hollowly down Broad Avenue. Everyone was gone. They'd all run away. The Joker ripped off his gas mask and threw it down on the float. He stole my balloons! Oh, he screamed. Batman flipped the proper switches to arm the Batwing. A computer voice softly announced when each of the devices was properly deployed. Searchlight, laser gun, Gatling gun, heat-seeking missiles. Well, that should be enough, or at least for the first run. A few more switches, and he had cleared the safety mechanism and armed the rockets. The Joker laughed, and he danced out into the path of the onrushing light. "Come to me!" he screamed. "You gruesome son of a bitch!" In the magnified sights, Batman saw a single figure standing in the middle of the street, jumping up and down and waving at the approaching plane. It was the Joker. He had his arms outstretched, as if in greeting. Well, Batman thought, if that's the way he wants it. Engage, he whispered softly. The computer did the rest. Bullets, lasers, and missiles screamed down on Broad Avenue, all taking out their assigned targets. In the middle of all the destruction, Batman saw the Joker doing a waltz. Everything had missed him. The Joker pulled out his gun, the one with the real long muzzle. He took careful aim as the plane turned around for another pass. He pulled the trigger. Bang! The Joker looked up from where the recoil had pushed him to the ground. Oh, it was a great gun, but it kicked like a mule. Bingo! Oh, did he have the best aim anywhere? Or what? The left wing of Batman's plane had sprouted fire and a very satisfying, thick black smoke. The plane was wobbling badly before it swooped down overhead. The Joker ducked as it passed a dozen feet above the street. It was aimed straight for the steps of the Gotham Cathedral, and that's exactly where it smashed. There was a moment of silence before the Joker started to laugh. For a moment, Vicky was dumbfounded. Then she started toward the wreckage. She felt something hard and cold press against her left temple. The Joker's gun barrel. Yeah, looks like I'll have to get you to the church on time. They reached the entrance to the cathedral. Batman hauled himself from the smoldering ruins of the plane. He knew he was badly hurt. He looked down at his body and saw torn and bruised flesh under the shredded costume. He looked around. The Joker was entering the cathedral. He had someone with him. Yeah, a woman, Vicky. He wrenched open the door to Gotham Cathedral. Where were the Joker and Vicky? They must be somewhere inside the building. In the tower? He shut the door behind him and locked it. Whatever happened would be between him and the Joker. Batman found himself at the foot of a long, steep flight of steps leading to the tower 800 feet above. He began to climb. Ah, you couldn't keep a good crime fighter down, huh? It had surprised the Joker for a moment to see that costume nut up and stumbling. But once you had survived a dunking in toxic waste, nothing surprised you for very long. Maybe the two of them would have their showdown after all, but he had a date with a helicopter in 5 minutes and a whole slew of stairs to climb. There was a trapdoor overhead, the top of the stairs, and his ticket out of here. Oh, it just proved that if you kept a sunny attitude, well, any job would go right. He reached past Vicky and pushed open the trapdoor. There! Upsy! the daisy," he said to Vicky as he gave her a final shove up into the belfry. He blinked to adjust his vision to the pale moon glow, which was the only source of light, and he examined his surroundings. A good-sized bell was set in a rocker in the middle of the room, and there were 2 smaller rockers to either side of that bell. Both were empty. Where were the bells? The Joker almost stumbled over them as he turned around. They were that close to the trap door. Ah, how convenient. These bells were heavy suckers. He loosened one of them from its mount with his acid-squirting flower. The heavy iron rolled down quickly, smashing through rotten wood as it went. Ah! Woo-hoo! This is better than bowling. The noise had been horrendous, crashing and banging against wooden planks and stone walls, tearing away steps and mortar, ripping away a whole 6-foot section, narrowly missing Batman. But that stairway would never be used again. Batman and the Joker had the battle to themselves. Somehow, Batman reached the trapdoor. He pushed against it. They were stuck. He tried again, but he had no strength. "You ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight?" The Joker thought he heard a noise under the trapdoor. Well, he couldn't help himself. Oh, you blame it on the Joker's curiosity. He pulled the second heavy bell off the edge of the trapdoor and opened the trap. Ah, there's nobody down there. Oh. I must have belled at the bat. He looked toward the rafters. Oh, it was dark up there. There ain't any more of you up there, are there? Daddy or Mummy Bats? On the third try, Batman managed to push open the trapdoor. He heaved himself into the belfry. He could see the glare of spotlights. He heard the sirens, the voices. Gordon would be assembling his forces, searching for an avenue of attack. By the time he found one, whatever was going to happen would be finished. But where was the Joker? Vicky. Then he heard it. The mocking, insane voice. "Ah, now, it seems I have a bat in my belfry." Outside on the roof, the Joker waltzed with Vicky. "I'd say we were made for each other, Beauty and the Beast." Mind you, if anyone else ever calls you the Beast, I'll rip their lungs out. Vicky knew Batman had to be injured. She felt a cold lump of despair growing within her. She looked down at the street and the searchlights. This was her weapon. The fact that they were 800 feet above the pavement. "Oh, you dance divinely," she purred. Vicky pressed herself against the Joker. "Just keep him moving back," she told herself. "Keep him moving toward the edge of the parapet." Behind Vicky, someone said, "Pardon me, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" A gloved fist smashed into the Joker's jaw, knocking him away from Vicky, sending him into a sprawl, through the doors, into the belfry. "I'm going to kill you," Batman said. "Oh, you crazy bastard!" the Joker howled. "You made me, remember? You dropped me in the acid. It was pretty hard to settle down after that. Oh, God knows I tried." Still smiling, Batman nodded. "I made you, and you made me." "Made you? How?" "Long before you were the Joker, you were a small-time hood named Jack Napier, banging innocent victims over the head for loose change until you made the big time." "So?" "So, one of those victims you banged over the head was my father, and when my mother protested, you did the same to her. You left them dead, and you left me an orphan. I never forgave you, Jack. Even with that facelift, I still recognize you. So, you see, you made me too." Now, it was the Joker's turn to laugh. He laughed like it was the funniest thing that he had ever heard in his whole life. Yeah, and that's when Batman leapt for him. The wood splintered, and the Joker tumbled outside onto the roof. The Joker was clutching at his mouth. He dropped his hand, and a pair of false teeth clattered to the tiles and began hopping toward the Batman. Oh, for a moment, Batman stared at the toy, distracted. The Joker punched him in the face. Batman returned the blow. The Joker slumped, and wiped the blood dripping from his chin. He took out a pair of black-rimmed glasses from a pocket, and he put them on. "Oh, no, you wouldn't hit a man with glasses, would you?" he simpered. Batman hit him. The Joker flailed, shuddered as he glanced over his shoulder at the emptiness, and he fell off the parapet. Batman's knees buckled. Vicky rushed over to him and held him until he could stand alone. Then, together, they peered over the rim of the parapet. Vicky saw nothing but empty pavement below, visible in the glare of the spotlights. Batman glanced upward. In the circle of the moon, there was the silhouette of a helicopter descending. Vicky gasped. Fingers had grasped her wrist and were pulling her. She had a second to see that Batman, too, was being tugged over the edge of the roof. Batman's arm wrapped around her waist, and abruptly she stopped falling. The Joker stood on the top of the grotesque statue, laughing. The Joker stamped on Batman's fingers. The Batman grabbed Joker's ankle. The gargoyle moved. A puff of masonry wafted from where the statue joined the wall of the cathedral. The Joker pulled his ankle free and kicked Batman in the head. A gust of wind tore at Batman and Vicky. It was the downdraft of the helicopter, now hovering directly over the belfry, and the noise from its engine was deafening. The gargoyle shifted, tilted. The Joker extended a hand toward Vicky. She looked into the Batman's face, asking a silent question. "Do it!" he shouted. "I can take care of myself." She grabbed the Joker's hand. It slipped off the end of his arm, and Vicky's body swung outward. She began to fall, following the plastic hand toward the pavement. Batman caught her upper arm. She dangled over 800 feet of empty air. A rope ladder popped from the belly of the helicopter and uncoiled down to the Joker. "Ta-ta!" he called. The Joker was rising into the circle of the moon. "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Batman groped at his belt and found what he sought. He lifted the small gun and squeezed the trigger. A thin metal line shot out, up, and whipped around the Joker's ankles. Batman wrapped the near end of the line around the gargoyle's snout and secured it. The Joker's eyes widened as he saw what was happening. "No, stop! No, wait! Oh, wait! Down! Down!" His voice was lost in the roar of the engine. His body stretched between the ladder and Batman's line. Batman boosted Vicky onto the gargoyle, and from there onto a ledge. With a clatter of broken masonry, the gargoyle wrenched free of the wall and, like a pendulum, veered outward, hanging from the Joker's ankles. Oh, the Joker's arms trembled with strain. Slowly, his fingers uncurled from the ladder, and for an instant he seemed to be suspended in midair. Then his lips split apart in a huge grin, and he laughed. He shrieked with laughter as he plunged down, down, down. The gargoyle shattered on the pavement, and the laughter stopped. But it echoed through the canyons of the city. It was over. Wasn't it? Until this moment, Batman had not allowed himself the final proof. He had not seen the Joker's body. Now he did. He gazed past the shards of the gargoyle to the mottle of red and green and white and purple splayed on the asphalt. He focused on the face and the ferocious grin, a wide, mirthless slash of smile that seemed to mock death itself. "Over there," someone yelled. Vicky turned to speak to Batman. He was gone. Vicky walked slowly through the city at sunset, a city that somehow felt much safer than it ever had before. Two small boys ran out of an alley, almost colliding with her. Both of the kids were wearing torn blankets behind them. Vicky realized they were supposed to be capes. "Sorry, lady," one of the kids apologized. "We was playing Batman." She watched them run away. It was nice kids could play like that again. She heard a sound overhead like a boot landing on cement. She looked up. It was Batman. A car pulled up at her side, a limousine. Alfred waved to her from the driver's seat. "I thought champagne might be in order, ma'am," the butler suggested. Vicky glanced up at the roof again. Batman was gone. She got in the car. The bottle sat in an ice bucket, already open for her. "Mr. Wayne said to tell you he'd be a bit late," Alfred remarked. Call it feminine intuition, call it love, but somewhere, deep inside her, Vicky discovered she knew Bruce Wayne's secret after all. Vicky poured herself some champagne. "I'm not surprised, Alfred," she replied. "I'm not surprised." Copyright 1989, Dove Books on Tape, Incorporated.